YouTube, what's going on? Happy 2022. I know a lot of y'all that are coming across this video are either subscribers of our channel, friends, family, or just somebody who is generally curious about how to create a budget. You haven't done one before, or maybe your old process, your old system of budgeting wasn't effective for you. So you're looking for a better way to improve your visibility on your finances. And I'm hoping this video will help for you. So I'm gonna cut straight to the chase. I'm going to be stepping you all through a step-by-step tutorial on how to create a budget from scratch. This is going to be appropriate for anybody who uses Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. So let's start from scratch here. We're going to create a blank workbook in Google Sheets, and we're going to start off with some high-level assumptions. So I'm going to try to keep this video as high level as possible. I'm going to keep the formulas as simple as possible. If you're not familiar with Excel or Google Sheets, some of the formulas may be a little bit foreign, but I'm going to try to break them down as easy and simplistically as possible. But let's get to it. So first thing that I think is really helpful for anybody creating a budget is understanding your high level financials for the year. So not necessarily your expenses line by line. That's always beneficial for a budget. But you also want to understand, how are my expenses impacting my income, right? What am I taking away at the end of the year, at the end of the month? And how do my expense categories break out relative to my income? So first portion of the income section that we're going to start off with is some high level income assumptions. So these are not necessarily assumptions if you know exactly what you're getting paid in this year, or for the entire year whenever you come across this video. Actually, let me zoom in real quick. I know that is actually helpful. So I'm gonna zoom in to 175%. Hopefully you all can see that much clearer. Last video I made, it actually came out really hazy, so this should help. So high level income assumptions. The first assumption that we're going to jump to is our gross income. Gross annual income. Let's say you're an individual, you're in a new position, and you're going to get paid $65,000 over the course of the year. That's your salary on paper. I know in working for a corporation for almost the past 4 years, I know that of that 65,000, you're not going to see that in your bank account. That's not going to be the money that comes to you. So with that, we're going to have to translate that to a net annual income, which means after your taxes, what are you taking home? So out of that 65,000, the government is going to take out about 25% off top, right? So let's assume of this 65,000, you're getting 75%, or times 0.75. This is your net annual income. Then we're going to break that down to a monthly net income. Monthly net income. And that's going to be your net income divided by 12 months. That is your net income, $4,062.50 a month. So let's convert that to dollars. I'll expand this section a little bit, and then I will merge this right here. Put some borders on there, make it fancy and visible so everybody can see. So now let's get to our expenses, right? So when it comes to the type of expenses you want in your budget, you want to account for 3 different categories of expenses. You got your fixed expenses, meaning the expenses that pretty much are constant throughout the entire year. You got your discretionary expenses, meaning that this is a choice. I have this as a recurring expense, but it doesn't necessarily change my livelihood. It's not an emergency for me to have this. And then lastly is going to be my savings. So some people may be questioning, why is savings bucketed out as an expense? It's not necessarily an expense if you choose to keep your savings, but some people, their savings goes towards certain funds. It goes towards certain categories that will eventually be spent. So savings can be considered an expense. So we'll leave this as the expense type. Okay. So now what we're going to do is start to create the skeleton of our budget. So the first thing we need to do is list out expense type. That's going to be our first column. Then we're going to have an expense description. Then we're going to have the budget amount, right, or budget dollars. Then we're going to have the spent amount, which is what we actually spend over the course of the month. And then lastly, we're going to have the over, actually the dollar over slash under budget. Did not spell that right at all. Okay, I'm going to highlight this row and I'm going to wrap the text. Center it. Okay, so my first expense type, we're going to go in order of what we already have listed out on the sheet. We're going to talk about fixed expenses first. So we have the fixed expense. For most people across the country, if you're an adult and you're looking to have a budget, the chances are you probably have rent or mortgage. So first expense is going to be rent slash mortgage. And we're going to do a simulation here. This is not my budget. This is not your budget. We're going to base some of these numbers off of some high level financial assumptions, just like we did for the gross income and the net income. So the budget, let's say on average across America, you're a single individual and you have a 2-bedroom apartment or maybe even a 2-bedroom house, right? 2-bedroom house, one bath, 3-bedroom house, whatever. Let's say your rent is going to come out to be $1,500 a month. That's your budget. Okay. Then you have another fixed expense with your rent and mortgage. Whether you're under the the subjection of a landlord or you are living in a house and you're under the rules and regulations of the city, they're going to require you to have renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. So we're going to put rent slash home insurance. And let's say, give or take, you're paying about let's say $60 a month on rent or homeowners insurance. Renter's insurance is pretty cheap. You'll probably get it for less than $60, but homeowners insurance is definitely more than 60. So I'm trying to create a little happy medium between those two expenses. Next fixed expense is going to be your car note, right? A lot of people don't own their car, so they're dealing with a monthly payment. Let's say your car note costs you $270 a month. Associated with your car note, if you have a car, then you got to have car insurance, or you will be going to jail. Let's say your car insurance is over the course of the year. Let's say your car insurance is $100 a month, give or take. Most adults have a phone. You got a phone bill. Let's say your phone bill is about $85 a month. That's a generous number, but realistic. Another fixed expense you'll want. Let's go with your phone bill. Home insurance is more so a discretionary expense. Life insurance. Life insurance is important. And ironically, life insurance is actually more affordable than what most people think. So I'd say realistic number to go here is $30 a month for life insurance. Another fixed expense. What is something that we consistently have every month that's not going? Health insurance. Health insurance is important. And we'll say health insurance is going to cost us another $75 a month. Then we'll add some blank lines here. This is more so for later in our budget. You'll see the purpose of something like this. And then we'll skip on to discretionary. Now we got the first discretionary expense. Remember, like I talked about, discretionary is any item that fluctuates over the course of each month. It's not necessarily a necessity, but this is a category that you absolutely want to account for. You want to have it in your budget because it ensures that the categories you're spending toward are accounted for, right? So even though it's not necessarily a mandated expense like a fixed expense, you still want that visibility toward all your discretionary items. So a big discretionary item is going to be groceries. You don't have to grocery shop. You can eat out every day if you wanted to. But groceries is important to have listed out on your budget. So let's do groceries. Then we'll do eating out, right? The opposite. Big expense for a lot of adults is shopping. Definitely a discretionary expense. We'll say another discretionary expense is hair, right? Cosmetics. See some of the videos we have on our page is related to barbering and natural hair. So hair grooming, we got to account for that. Then we'll put another section for miscellaneous grooming. In other words, whether you're a guy or a girl and you're checking out this video, we really don't want to narrow down to what type of grooming. Like hair is pretty generic. Most people are getting their hair done, guy or girl. But then from a miscellaneous standpoint, you know, ladies and guys are getting their nails done. Same thing with like eyebrows and stuff like that, massages. All that is going to be lumped together in the miscellaneous grooming section. And then after miscellaneous grooming, let's see what other discretionary expenses. Gym membership, right? Some people work out. This is an important expense for me right here. It's if you go to church, you know it's called tithing or tithes. Other people will loosely call it giving, right? So we can do tithes slash giving or charity, like whatever you want to consider that. That's a certain percent. And it's also, remember, discretionary expense, meaning it's up to you. I just realized discretionary is not spelled right. There it is. Discretionary. So you got tithes, giving, got your gym expenses, you got your what else is discretionary? Groceries, eating out, shopping, hair, miscellaneous, gym, tithes, giving. Oh, Wi-Fi. Don't need Wi-Fi, but I wouldn't have this video without it, right? So Wi-Fi is important. With Wi-Fi, a lot of people have Hulu, right? Let's just stick to one subscription. And then we'll also say Apple Music, because I know that number off the top of my head. So all these are discretionary expenses. And then we'll add another section for blank discretionary. And then let's go down the list. So let's say average adult spends $200 on eating out. Groceries, $200 a month for an individual adult. Let's say eating out is half of your grocery budget. So this assumption is basically saying 2/3 of the month I'm going out. 2/3 of the month I'm cooking in the house. The other third of the month I'm eating out, right? So that's not necessarily a bad assumption. Could probably scale back, but it's not unrealistic. Shopping, a lot of people don't know how to kind of come up with a reasonable number for shopping, and that's understandable because it's a very broad category. Not always just clothes. There are other things that fall into that category. But let's say your shopping budget is going to be 3% of your monthly net income. So you're allocating intentionally a certain percentage of what you take home, and that's going to be 3%. So 3% is 0.03 times monthly net income. And I'm going to lock cell B6. So I'm putting a dollar sign in front of B, a dollar sign is in front of 6. So in case I want to drag down that formula for future months, it's locked on that cell. So that was shopping. And then grooming. So remember, we said we want grooming to be inclusive of both guys and girls. So if average guy haircut is about $35, average girl's hairdo is probably about 100, right? At least I know from what my wife gets done is about 100. If I were to go to the barbershop, I cut my own hair, but if I would go to the barbershop, I'd probably be paying about $35 for a cut. So let's do 100 for the girls plus 35 divided by 2 to come down to a happy medium. So this is going to be the hair grooming. But mind you, that's just for one haircut. So let's multiply that by 2. That gives us 2 trips to the hair groomer, stylist, or the barber a month. $135 on average. And this is a tipping business too, because it's a service. So you got to tip, and we tip the best. So that's 1.2 extra. So times 1.2 just means adding 20% to what that expense is. So we got hair grooming in there. Same thing for miscellaneous. We'll just say this equals this. All right. Gym membership, we'll go on the conservative end and say our gym membership is $40 a month. Obviously, there are, you know what? Let's say 25. That's more conservative because there's Planet Fitness. Um, Out in Wisconsin, you have experience. If you get a membership for the lower level packages, you can get a gym membership for $25 or cheaper. Tithes and giving, let's just say personally, you're going to stick to the basics here. For tithes, it's going to be 10%. So zero point 0.1 times your monthly net income. And again, I'm locking this sale. So that's $400 a month going to tithes and giving. And then Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is about $50 a month. Hulu, I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but we'll just ballpark it and say Hulu is 20. It's probably 20 with the bundle. So this is like the Hulu bundle right here. So we'll just rename that. Then we got Apple Music. I know this price by the back of my hand, $10.54. All right. We got the next blank discretionary. We're pretty much done with that category. Now we're going to go into savings. Savings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's say first category of savings, let's say with your annual income of $65,000 a year, you're at a company that offers you a 401k. We're going to treat that as a savings category because that money is not going to your checking account. So if your 401k, we're going to list that out as the category, and then most companies will match you up to a certain percent. And in order for you to maximize that, you want to copy whatever that percent match is that your company or your organization is offering. You want that at least going to your 401k account every paycheck. So let's say of your monthly expense, your company says, we can match you at 5% of your contribution to your 401k. That means we're going to do 0.05 times what you make monthly, or excuse me, 401k actually comes from your gross income, not your net income. 401k is from your gross, so 0.05 of 65,000. Then we're going to lock that 65,000. And then because that 65,000 is the annual number, we want to divide that by 12 to come down with that monthly income. So $270 is what we're contributing to our 401k each month from a gross perspective. Then 401k, we also have an emergency fund. This is another one of those spending categories that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to contribute to. We're going to factor in an extra 2% of your income, right? There are some studies or some experts that'll say, hey, make your emergency fund 3%, make it 5%, make it 1%. There's ranges everywhere out there. Let's go with 2%. That's going to be our happy medium, equals 0.02 times of your monthly income, monthly net income, excuse me. And we're going to lock that cell again. $80 a month is going toward your emergency fund. And then lastly, a travel fund. So let's say you're an individual like me and my wife. We're going to take at least one nice trip a year, right? Next week, we're on our way to Jamaica. That's going to be our nice trip for the year. And then we might have like a little domestic getaway later in the year, you know, as our income becomes more stable and we build up our savings. But let's say you're like us and you want one nice trip guaranteed a year, you're going to account for it in your savings. So let's say your travel fund is going to be $500 for one round trip, right? So you got $500 for a round trip ticket. And then let's say you're going somewhere for 5 days. So 5 days, give or take, you want to account for your lodging, where you're going to stay, Airbnb, hotel. You want to account for your car rental. You want to account for food. So let's say on a given day, you're spending roughly for a car rental, that's about $8 a day. Food, that's going to be about $60 a day. That's 140. And then your lodging, let's say that's an extra $100 a day, right? That's generous. And let's say extra $150 a day, right? So you said lodging is 150 a day. Car is 80 a day, so that's 230. And then your food is 60 a day. That's 310. So you got plus 310 times 5 days. So that's basically an extra $1,550 plus. So you got your ticket, you got your stay, then you got shopping, right? When you're out somewhere, you're going to shop. Let's say you're kind of conservative and instead of balling out there, you only spend like $30 a day shopping. That's going to be times 5. So you got $150 on shopping. Is there anything else? Oh, activities, right? You maybe, you want to go jet skiing, you want to go snorkeling, you want to go sightseeing, bike riding, whatever you want to do out there. Let's give another $50 a day for all your activities. That's also pretty conservative, but it's realistic. $250 a day for your activity. So one trip is going to cost you about $24.50. But then also, remember, we accounted for $24.50. We said that's one nice trip, but we also want to take possibly a smaller scale trip in the States, right? Maybe not an international trip or a big fancy trip like we just accounted for and did some quick mental math for. Maybe we'll do a small trip. So let's say that trip's going to be half the price of this, which is $12.25. So we'll also add plus $12.25 for a second trip. $36.75 total is what you need to be working for the entire year to afford both of those trips. We'll divide it by 12 to figure out how much should I be saving per month. I need to be saving $306 a month in order to afford a nice fancy trip that we just calculated, plus a smaller trip that's not as fancy. So let's change the format of some of this right here. So it's strictly dollars. Now we have accounted for our expenses and our budget. Now let's do some formatting here and some addition. So we have our total, then we have our subtotal, and I'll explain what both of those are in a little bit, but total is going to be the sum of everything here all the way down through C40. Subtotal is going to look like it's the same thing, but it's not. So I'm doing the subtotal function, parentheses, the number 9, which is the sum formula for subtotal, and I'm going down to the same line that we ended for our total. Format's going to be the same. Then I'm copying this for my spent. I'm copying this for my over under. Then I am adding borders to everything here so we can get some structure to what we see. And then right here, I'm going to merge and center. Okay, make sure it's centered as well. Okay, there we go. And then what we'll say is that this is our January budget. All we're going to do now for the rest of the spreadsheet is duplicate this for the rest of the year. Then our life is simple. So we got January. We're going to add some borders. We're going to make it bold. We're going to add some color in here. Make this a little bit bigger so it's clear to see. We're going to italicize this right here. Make that bold. Add some color so we know what that is. Add some color here as well. Italicize that. All right. So our monthly budget in January and what's also going to be replicated for the rest of the year is $4,000.36. I'm already looking at this right now. This monthly net income is cutting it real close to what this monthly budget is. So in my head, we're going to have to, for the purpose of the simulation, I don't want this person making too much money, but it's going to have to bump up a little bit. So let's say instead of 65, this person is making $72,000 a year. All right, now that's better. $4,500. They're spending 41. Obviously, it's not the best, but they can save some money, and we'll talk about that in some other examples. All right. So now we have our January tab. We're going to copy January. What we're going to do is go 3 lines down, and we'll paste change this to February. Okay. So the only thing that I'm doing here that's different from this is that I want these expenses to absolutely feed down for the rest of the year. So whatever's in January, I want it captured in February all the way through this December. So I'm going to make this equal to this expense. And I'm going to do that through my budget and then copy that all the way down. I'm not copying the spent and the over under budget. Let me do this real quick too. Over under, all that means is that from what I spent, how much did I spend over or how much did I go under what I put in my budget? So that means I need to calculate what I spent. If I spent $2,000 minus my 1,500, then I would have been um, over $500 for the month. Okay. So that's going to be down 4130. All that means is that we didn't spend anything. We're under 4130 because we haven't spent anything in this category yet. Okay. So then we're going to copy that formula all the way down here. Now we can copy this since this equals this is going to, since this equals what was in January rent mortgage, all we can do now, or all we need to do now is copy and paste for each month. So January, February, March, I'm going to copy this 3 rows down. April, I'm going to copy this. May. All I'm doing is control copy, control V, and I'm editing the text for each month. June, control copy, July, control copy, August, control copy. I know a lot of you are probably like, man, this sheet is getting long. I don't want to look through a big old sheet like this. This is the reason why I have it broken out like this. So now what we're going to do, what I'm going to show you to do is collapse your cells. So underneath each month, what we're going to be able to do is hide or expand and collapse our expenses so that if we don't want to see it, we can hide it. So all I'm going to do is click on cell 407, drag all the way down through 438, right click, more row actions, group 407 through 438. Now I can collapse this. If I don't want to see December, I can click the minimize button. If I want to show it, I can click the plus button. All right, so I'm going to do that. All I'm going to do now is just paint format each month to do the same thing. So I'm clicking this paint format button at the top, and the section or the line that you'll want to click is the row number. So not inside the cells or inside the spreadsheet. You want to click the row number that you're going to start off with. That'll collapse. That's right underneath the month, and click paint format. There you go. Minimize that. And I'll do the same thing for the next month. October, paint format. And I'll do the same thing for September, so on and so forth. So I won't belabor that point. Click paint format, click the row. last month here, January. All right. So now we can collapse every single month so we can get a high level view of what is this spreadsheet going to start to look like as we work through it for the entirety of the year. This is what it looks like so far. We have January rolled up. If I want to go into April, I just finished the month of April. Then I go in here and I start tracking what I spent, right? You do the same thing for every single month. Simple. Now what I'm going to do up top, to make things a little bit easier in terms of how we're viewing it, I also want to roll up the entire spending for the year in the top section. So I wanted to look just like I did for January section and all the rest of my month. I just want to insert it at the top of my page so I can see how I'm tracking. So what I'm going to do is insert some cells above January, insert 35 rows, and then I'm just going to copy what January is. Let's say it's like right here. That was actually perfect. Okay. And then this is going to be called annual annual recap. Or no, let's say annual roll up. Annual roll up. Okay, so this calculation is going to have to change. The different formula here. Spent is going to be a copy of what we do in the budget. So to make this simple, all we're going to do is add each individual budget number that's in each month for rent and mortgage, and then we're going to drag down these formulas for everything else. It'll be very simple. So first, let's expand everything so that we have each month visible. So now we do have everything visible. Annual roll up. So this equals, all I'm going to do is equals January. Actually, here, this will be a little bit better. So the sum of January's number, comma, February's rent, March rent, April rent. I'm going to do that for every single month. Okay, then it gives me this autofill suggestion. I'm going to click yes because I want that formula just dragged down row by row for every single expense, and that'll save us some time. So our annual budget for the year is $49,000. And then all we're going to do is drag all these formulas over to the right. That's going to do the same thing just for the column over in column D. So then we can see what exactly we spent as well. Sorry if that was a nuisance, you all. I didn't even really see that. So we have our annual roll up. I'm going to do the same thing that we did so that like February and the rest of our months equals everything that's entered in January. So I'll show you the reason why we left some of these blank sections, for example. So let's say under my fixed expenses, I wanted to add like dental insurance, for example. Dental insurance, you'll see now dental insurance is accounted for in February, accounted for in March, accounted for in April, right? And that's going to be for the rest of the spreadsheet for every single month. When it comes to our annual roll up, it's not accounted for. So all I want this to do right here is equals. I want my expense type to equal whatever I enter in January is fixed. And then I'm going to drag that to the right. So it equals that as well. So the expense description will be accurate. And then I'll drag it all the way down to the bottom. Now, dental insurance, for example, if I wanted to add that, would be accounted for the entire year. But I'm going to take out dental insurance since we didn't budget for that, even though you probably should have dental insurance. Okay, now we're pretty much good with our sections. And then we'll also do the same thing with the grouping here in case you want to hide that ever. Group them. There you go. Now, expense type. Remember, we talked about our expenses. The purpose of this budget was so that we can see of each category of expense, how much are we spending relative to our total income. That's the importance of having a budget like this. Instead of just tracking your expenses, you're also tracking what does that mean for my take home money, my take home earnings. So we're going to put of your income. Well, one, we can start off with the budget. So this is budget. We can put total budget. Total budget. Then we can put percent of net income, just so we know for this category. So this is going to be whatever this number is. We're going to make a calculation for what percent of that, what percent is that of my net income. Then we're going to do total spent. Then we're going to do dollar over under budget. And that's pretty much all we need to account for. Okay. So this is going to be, oh, cancel. Wrap text, center it. Sorry, in the middle. There you go. So my total budget is going to equal the sum. So this is why I have this annual roll up tab right here, so that instead of like creating some long, intricate formula to go through each month for each of these expenses, we can just roll it up at the top. All of our fixed expenses are at the top. So we'll sum all of our fixed expenses right here, enter. Then it says discretionary. So we'll do equals the sum of all of our discretionary expense budgets, enter. And then savings equals the sum of all of our savings expenses. There we go. And then now I'm going to do a total line as well. So my total equals the sum of that. Same case for this. Same case for this. And then total spent equals the sum for the fixed category line. Total spent equals the sum of all my fixed expenses spent. Then it equals for discretionary, the sum of all my discretionary spent line. And then for savings, it equals the sum of all my savings spent. Okay. And then since the over under budget is right next to the spent column, or it's adjacent to the spent column, we can literally copy this formula and put it right here. So a control copy, control paste. All that is summing for my fixed expenses. What did I spend? For my discretionary expenses, what did I spend? Same thing for the savings. Then we'll add some formatting here. And then we'll merge this as well to summarize what this is. This is the annual recap year to date. So all year to date means is that some of these financials that's captured in this section are going to be rolling and are going to be dynamic over the course of the year. So total budget, for example, in column F is going to stay consistent. Whatever you put in the month of January is going to multiply times 12, and that's going to be added up to be your total budget per expense type. That stays the same. But then in terms of your percent of net income, that's going to increase as you go throughout the year, because the assumption is that you're spending more money as you get through December. So year to date just means pretty much like tracking or in progress. So we'll put a border around that. And then percent of net income, I'm gonna make this bold down here too. So percent of net income means equals this divided by our total net annual income is $54,000. Remember, this is an annual recap. So we have to tie back our annual expenses, our annual budget for the year back to our annual net income, not monthly net income. So I'm going to lock that number on cell B5. I want it to stay on the net income. Enter. And then I'll accept this autofill because it's doing the same thing for me. All it's doing is dragging based off of the line it's on. So discretionary divided by net income, savings divided by net income, total divided by net income. And then lastly, this needs to be bold. And then we'll add a little bit of color right here. Pop a little bit, pop out a little bit. Okay. So the budget is done, right? The one thing that I would like to add is our earnings. So let's say net earnings. Net earnings means after the expenses, which is pretty much the purpose of this budget, to track our expenses, how much money we put toward it. Our net earnings is going to be our net income minus our total dollars spent for the year. So right now that number is saying 54,000, which would basically imply we took home every single dollar that we earned. That's not going to be true. We're going to simulate what this could look like for the entire year. If you were interested in just like watching this video for the purpose of the budget or how to create the budget, you're done. Like everything in this video is pretty much complete. We'll summarize what that looks like in a second here. But the purpose of net earnings is to say, hey, after my spending, after some spending scenarios, this is what my net earnings could look like for the year realistically. So we'll center that. We'll add some border. And we'll make this bold, and then we'll make this yellow so it stands out. So we know what our net earnings is, what we're shooting for. Okay. So I'm going to make this quick because I know people don't want to watch a long video. It's already long at this point, but it's also helpful. It's long, but it's helpful. It'll be beneficial. You can endure an hour to have a good hold of your finance for the rest of the year. It will be worth it. I tell you that for sure. And the positive thing about this is that once you get done for the year, you'll recap and you'll understand, hey, where do I need to make improvements or adjustments in my spending? You can file, make a copy for 2023, then for 2024, for years to come, you have a template and you'll be able to look at your spending over years. So man, come on, man, this is gold. Anyway, rent, mortgage. So let's say all your fixed expenses is pretty much locked and loaded for every single month. That's going to be consistent. So in January, we'll copy it, pay special, values only. Remember at the top of this budget, we said we want to see how is our income tying out or shaking out versus our, or how's our budget shaking out relative to our income. This 92% of my money being allocated toward my expenses seems like a lot, right? I'm spending 92%, almost 92% of my income. Like, dang, I only make 8%. So let's say this person in this simulation or this example right here says, on my discretionary expenses, I need to pull back a lot. And I'm going to be very intentional and specific about what areas I pull back in. So groceries is pretty important for us to spend groceries. Let's say groceries is actually higher than what we thought we would spend. Let's say we spend $255 a month on groceries, but then we take it out of eating out. So instead of eating out $100 worth, we eat out just $65 worth a month. Shopping, shopping is one of the biggest pitfalls because it's one of the most impulsive decisions we can make in our spending habits. And we probably don't need everything that we buy. So from a shopping standpoint, let's say this person says, hey, I got too much stuff. I don't want to be materialistic. I'm going to spend just 70% or 0.7 of what my shopping budget is for the year. So even though I have $135 dedicated to shopping, I'm only spending 95 of it. Hair grooming. So this is a good way to look at hair grooming. Remember in our scenario, we said times 2 because we're going to the hair groomer twice a month, and we did the same thing for miscellaneous grooming. We're getting that done twice a month and pretty much assume those expenses would be pretty close in price. Instead of every 2 weeks, let's say we go every 3 weeks. What that means is that if you were to take 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you were to go 4 months, your expectation with your original budget is that you go to the groomer 8 times. No, not 4 months. Let's do 3 months because it's not divisible by 3 weeks. If you go to the groomer 3 months, your expectation in our original budget is that you would have gone to the groomer 6 times. If you go every 3 weeks over the span of 3 months, that means you only gone 3 times. So instead of 6, right? No, you said 3 months too. Yeah, instead of 6, actually within 3 months, there are 12 weeks. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. Every 3 weeks in 3 months means you're going to the groomer 4 times. So instead of 6 times, you're going 4 times, meaning 4 out of 6 is what you're spending relative to your hair grooming. So this is 4 out of 6, or really 2/3. We can make it simple. 2/3 of my spending is really what I'm doing for my grooming. So $108 instead of 162. Same thing for my miscellaneous grooming. Instead of going 2 times a week, every 2 weeks, I'm going every 3 weeks. It's going to save me a third of what I budgeted in my miscellaneous grooming section or my total grooming section. Gym, that's not changing. We're going to be consistent. Let's also say we're going to be consistent in our tithes and giving. Wi-Fi is pretty standard. That's going to stay. Hulu, let's say instead of the bundle, we just got the basic Hulu. So we're actually going down to $12 a month. We didn't get the Disney Plus or whatever else comes with Hulu. Apple Music, we'll do the 1054. That's consistent. And then all these funds right here we're going to treat those as fixed expenses. Right? We're absolutely saving and working toward our retirement. We want to have a bright future. We want to make sure that once we're done with working, we have a good amount of money to pull from. So that's going to stay consistent. Emergency fund, you never know what's going to happen, right? Your emergency fund is for anything that you couldn't really plan for. So say, for example, you get into a car accident, your car insurance coverage was only liability. So in case you hit somebody, or excuse me, in case somebody hit you, no, your liability is when you hit the other person. In case you hit somebody, then it'll be covered. But when in the case of somebody hitting you, your car insurance may not cover that. So emergency fund is in case something like that happens, I got some money saved up to where I can pull from this fund. Travel, remember we did that fancy scenario of if I'm on a 5-day vacation trip, it costs me this amount of money. I want that accounted for over the course of the year. But then I also want a smaller scale trip accounted for as well. That's going to be about half of that price. So that's going to be $306 a month. We're absolutely taking that trip, right? We're absolutely taking those trips. So all we're going to do now is copy this. We pretty much broke out our scenario and like how we're coming to spend in a certain way based off of I'm spending too much of my income. We're going to copy and paste this for the rest of the year. Values only, values only, values only. Just pasting it all the way through December. Okay, so we're done. That's all the way through December. And we can collapse these months. Mind you, this is probably not realistic because given certain times of the year, November and December, most people are spending well over what their budget amounts are. But we were just saying for the sake of time, we don't want to simulate each month the way we did January. We just want to do that for 1 month and kind of give us a high level approach to the entire year. But now we have that. Now we have our annual roll up. This is what we want to look at. So we budgeted $49,569 for the entire year. We spent $47,900. That shakes out to us saving or being under our budget by $1,600. Um, so instead of us, actually, I want to add a column here. Total spent. We can do spent percent of income. So this is the budget percent of net income, spent percent of net income, just to see how we compare here. So we're just going to copy this formula here and paste it here. Now that means about what I spent, how much was it relative to my total net income. So instead of spending 92%, I spent 89%. It's not the worst. The reason why it's not the worst actually is because a lot of your spending was towards savings. If you chose for some reason, I don't want to take that trip, of this $8,300 that you allocated towards savings, remember, in our annual roll up, we can look and see how much did I allocate toward travel. Almost $4,000 was really travel. If you say, hey, I want to actually save on that small trip, so that's going to be probably a third of this of what this amount is here. So you can save about $1,200. Same thing with an emergency fund. That money is really yours to spend how you like, but you just have it broken out to say, in case something happened, I put $1,000 toward this emergency fund. And 401k, that's toward your future. So you're only benefiting yourself. So of what you really spent 73% of your income. The other 27% is for you. What does this mean for the total year? My net earnings was $6,000. So remember, we said net earnings is our net annual income minus what we actually spent, $6,000. That is a good year. Anybody that's taking home $6,000 in a year means that they obviously have some good spending habits. Some people make more money. $6,000 may not mean a lot, but for a person who is making $72,000 on a net of $54,000, $6,000 to take home is decent, right? You make more money, you get tighter on certain expenses. That 6,000 can become 7, 8, 9, 10, right? But over the course of time, multiply that by 5 years, you didn't save $30,000. Your income increases, you didn't save $40,000, $50,000. So I hope that this helped you all. I will zoom out just a little bit to 150%, so we can see what this annual budget looks like. So we have the high level income assumptions over here, started with our gross, then our net, then we went to the monthly, then we have the annual recap that's rolling up everything. Total budget was almost $50,000 for the year. We spent just shy of 48, came under our budget by 1,600. That's a win. Then we had our net earnings over here, which is an important number. What did we take home relative to our income, or what are we expecting to take home relative to our income? And then each section for the rest of the year is rolled up. So after January, if you wanted to use a tool like this and build out this budget for yourself, at the end of January, all you're doing is coming in line by line saying, hey, I spent $1,500. I'm typing $1,500. That's what I spent. Each month, you'll be doing the same thing. Collapse it when you don't want to see it anymore. Go on to February. You'll do the same thing in the spent category. Everything will feed from January for the rest of the year, and it makes it very easy. So this is a very exhaustive budget. Not everybody ties back their income to it, but hopefully you all benefited from it and enjoyed it. Obviously, if you appreciate it, leave your feedback. We definitely want that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you gained something valuable from it. Have a good one.